Here every Monday night, and will be for the next several months, doing events like this and other kind of more fun social events too. So invite you to come out 7 o'clock. Please support our local Kava Bar. They're very generous in allowing us to be here, and they have great fun alternative plant medicine drinks. So super fun and cool. I am very, very excited about tonight's guest. We are welcoming her back onto the stage tonight, but she has been on quite a long and interesting journey the past couple of years, and she is someone that has been quite, I think I can say, touched and influenced in her life by plant medicines. Is very passionate about it, and you'll catch that tonight. And tonight, a lot of the talk is really about personal liberty and personal freedoms, I think is kind of how I would summarize it. And so it's not just about her, it's actually about all of us. It's about every single one of us, and I think you guys will catch that. So again, very excited, and please help me welcome Jennifer Murphey to the stage.
I talk with my hands a lot, so I asked for a stand.
Is that the right height for my door?
I don't know. Is it?
Bring it down a little bit and then put the mic.
Thank you. I'm nervous. Sometimes I don't know why the universe chose me to do this, but I used to get panic attacks talking in front of people, and I'm still testing it. I think I'll be okay tonight. But it's funny because my higher self, knows that I get panic attacks just talking in front of like 3 people, and she signed me up to create the biggest lawsuit in history to end the war on drugs. So I have to be out there, and my goal and my job is to help you all understand what it's about. So I'm going to kind of start with the creation of the lawsuits, so that you can kind of understand the role of lawsuits in making big change. So I think most people know that the war on drugs is harmful, that it hurts so many people, and it's unjust. But many, we don't know necessarily like how or why or what to do about it. And my whole life, I've been very close to individuals and worked with individuals who had addiction or in and out of psychiatric institutes, and my heart is just really with those individuals. And I saw from an early age how the system really hurts people. And in the past 5 years or so, or before I was doing the lawsuit, or before I just started the lawsuit, I was working a lot with addicts in recovery, and I was also volunteering at a homeless shelter, writing resumes for homeless individuals. And the thing that really drove me to do this was just seeing the self-hatred, where like the individuals that would come to me at the homeless shelter wouldn't be able to even look me in the eye because they just felt like they were pieces of shit. And that's essentially what society has told them. And I just, I couldn't stand by and watch that anymore. So in 2021, I started to get a seed in my head. When I was in law school, one of the things that fascinated me was how much change a lawsuit can do. I thought it was just beautiful, so amazing that just this lawsuit can make so much change. And so I wanted to do something big, and everything I do is just either big or nothing. So I was like, okay, what can I do? And so I quit my job and I started researching. I isolated essentially and researched for several months. That's just all I did. And I looked at decades of documents from the World Health Organization, from other UN entities, and from the DEA, everything surrounding the war on drugs. I just looked at all the documents and tried to figure out how can I create this into something that could cause change, that could help this, and I wanted to end the war on drugs. There is no in between. And the main thing I was doing was learning the energy of it. I've sat in a lot of ceremonies working on this lawsuit, like just figuring out the energy of it, and just kind of getting to the core of it. And essentially, what the war on drugs does, and also just kind of, by the way, this isn't just about psychedelics. This is ending the entire war on drugs. I'm not leaving any brothers and sisters behind just because they, maybe take pills without the government's label on it versus plants. This is for everybody. And so I've looked at this from so many angles, and essentially what it boils down to is possession is criminalized. And so essentially it's millions of people being imprisoned and told that they're bad and that they're worthless, and they walk around thinking that, and all because they held in their hand a non-government approved product, a product without the government's label on it. It's largely a commercial law that people are being imprisoned, and people's families and neighbors and society are convinced that if someone is consuming something and it doesn't have the government's label on it, that they deserve to go to jail, that they deserve everything they get. And that's just mind-blowing to me, because that's the only difference. We have an entire federal, law enforcement agency, the DEA, all to punish non-compliant consumers, people who are using, or just having a product in their possession that they didn't get from from the government, from their drug dealers, or that doesn't have the government's label on it. I mean, you can substitute that with any product, and it was just, I don't know, I was looking at that, that's just incredible to me, that we have created this entire thing where people are literally put into cages all because they used a non-government approved product. And then, I'm trying to think. So, going through, I didn't know exactly how I was going to apply this to the law. And again, back to why lawsuits are beautiful, because the government can make any kind of laws as long as it passes through the legislative system. And then it's up to us to then say, okay, this law is actually against the Constitution, and then we have to bring it to the courts, and then let the courts decide. And that's just the process. It's a beautiful way to make change, because once a law is in effect, to get that changed any other way is very difficult. There can be new laws passed or the laws can be amended, but to actually to a lawsuit, that gives you the opportunity to bring it to the courts and say, what, our Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And so all laws are essentially can be judged against the Constitution, and the Constitution trumps everything. So I was looking through all the documents. I didn't know what my arguments would be, what my claims would be. I just knew it was wrong. And it was so appalling going through everything. Like, I couldn't believe that this has been going on so long and no one has done anything about it. The examples go on and on, but the main claim. So let me back up a little bit and explain a little bit more about how the lawsuit works. So I I found some claims that to where the Controlled Substances Act and these two international treaties. This isn't just the Controlled Substances Act. There's actually two international treaties where the United Nations, the World Health Organization, they schedule drugs, and then because the United States is a party, they then just say, okay, World Health Organization, you want us to schedule this, and we're gonna like write, rules and regulations, and we're gonna schedule this substance like this, and they don't even do their own evaluation. So the World Health Organization and the UN have been the ones to make the scheduling decisions for a lot of substances. Most of the ones, like most psychedelics and plant medicines. What was I saying? I forgot. So I figured out some claims, and then I identified the defendants, and I had to learn how to do all this. I'd only been an attorney for a few years. I had no clue how to do any of this, so it's taken hundreds and hundreds of hours to learn all this, to learn how to write a complaint and learn all the rules. And to do this, I've essentially been isolated for the past 3-4 years by myself with my thoughts, 24 hours a day, figuring this out. And so in July of 2022, I completed the complaint and filed it, and it was Jennifer Murphey versus the United States, the DEA, FDA, HHS, and the state of Arizona. And I had about like 5 different claims in there, all constitutional based, or most of them. And then the defendants, this is normal in a lawsuit, the defendants, whenever a person files a claim against somebody, the defendants will file motions to dismiss, which essentially says these claims have no merit, so they shouldn't even go forward to discovery and to trial and all those stages. So they filed that, which was expected, and I filed my responses to that. And then the federal district court ended up siding with them and dismissed all of my claims, which was actually beautiful. It was so perfect, because he also gave me standing. He dismissed all my claims, but he gave me standing, and that is a big hurdle in litigation, is to have standing that says, you have an injury, and you have standing. Sorry. And in order to get that standing, which you can do that before, I didn't have to be arrested or prosecuted first. If you're breaking a law that you allege is unconstitutional, and you admit, I plan to continue breaking this law, then your injury is the constant threat and fear of prosecution, always looking over your shoulder, because you are doing something that you believe you have a right to do, but this law is unconstitutional, so therefore, you have an injury because you have a threat of prosecution. So I admitted, I made sure to cover everything in the treaties, like every substance that I have, done, and admitted to possessing and or growing multiple substances. And so he said I had standing, which was really good, but dismissed all the claims, which was also really good, because if he only dismissed a couple of the claims, and maybe he dismissed, what if he dismissed like my favorite claims, if he only dismissed a couple of claims, then I wouldn't have been able to go to the Ninth Circuit right away. And so basically what that judge did was just hand me like a golden ticket to the fast track to the US Supreme Court. So now I'm already in the Ninth Circuit. And so I filed my appeal, which is just essentially saying that the lower court judge improperly dismissed my claims, that they do have merit. And so I'm asking the Ninth Circuit to look at that and reverse that decision. And so that I filed that in August of last year, not too long ago. And the Ninth Circuit gets thousands and thousands of claims, and they only ask for oral argument for a fraction of those. And they asked me on December 6th to come to oral argument. So I get to go up in front of the Ninth Circuit and present these arguments. And whatever the court decides, it is going to have an impact. It is going to, no one has ever brought these claims, has ever challenged the entire war on drugs like this. And that's going to be on April 1st. I ask that anyone that can be there to please be there. I'll be sending out press releases and stuff like that. It's on a Tuesday at 9 a.m. and it's big. It's really big. To also as a self-represented person, because I'm a plaintiff, you know, for them to ask for oral argument, the odds of that are, you know, are even lower. But they did, and so it's huge. And so, but I did not appeal the dismissal of all the claims. I'm only appealing the dismissal of 2 claims, and they are the strongest claims. They are mainly one of them. So I want to go over those so that you understand this and what it is about. So my favorite claim, the one that's just my heart and really impacts all of us, is First Amendment freedom of thought. So to understand this better, it can be easier to just forget everything you know about the war on drugs, forget, you know, all the programming, everything. Because I mean, the end of this is going to be decriminalization, but it is not about decriminalization. And in my opinion, if someone were to say, I don't know if I want drugs decriminalized, that is essentially saying, I don't know if I want someone using a substance and feeling whatever they feel in the privacy of their own body, in the privacy of their home. And to me, that's no one's damn business. So that's the end result, that possession, holding a product that doesn't have the government's label on it, that will no longer be criminalized. However, that's not the point of it. And I think that it will help the courts too, and help everyone else to understand, if you just put that aside, should drugs be decriminalized, you know, because that gets too muddy, it's too messy, it's been so much propaganda, and we just look at the core of it. So the First Amendment covers freedom of thought. That's under freedom of speech. There's another element of it, freedom of thought. Freedom of thought is given the most fiercest protection. And if you, even more so than freedom of speech. And if you think about it, you know, what thoughts, unexpressed thoughts, those are the most sacred things that we have as humans. No one can ever know what our thoughts are. We can choose to try to express them, but they're never going to be an accurate portrayal of what's actually occurring inside. That's something that, this is just for me, my thoughts, my beliefs, my feelings, and each of you, that's yours. It is, I believe, one of the most sacred aspects of our human existence is what happens internally. We can choose to express that, but again, it's not going to be what we get to experience. And it's beautiful because the courts and the Constitution recognize that. It's like some angels put protection over those sacred realms of what happens inside of us. And the courts have said that the government is strictly prohibited from ever entering those private realms of our thoughts. They cannot do it. And they especially cannot do it for the purpose of creating criminal legislation. There's been a few cases, thank goodness, that were on point with this. And so I have some beautiful quotes from the US Supreme Court stating just that the government cannot judge a person's thoughts or beliefs, only a person's actions. And that it is a realm that the government cannot penetrate for any reason. It's impossible anyways. Anything that, if the government anybody's trying to go into our thoughts, it's all just gonna be predictions. No one can ever know what's actually in there. And so I have the law which states the government is absolutely prohibited from entering our minds and trying to figure out what's going on within us for the purpose of creating criminal legislation. Well, going through all these documents, that's exactly what the government does. Every single scheduling decision, every drug evaluation is 90% dedicated to investigating our thoughts. How does it make us feel? What are we thinking? And it's even written in the, so that most people know that like abuse is the main point of the drug war, that's what they say, we gotta prevent abuse, and there's drugs of abuse, and that they actually say that in the preamble of the international treaties and the Controlled Substances Act, that their goal for the legislation is to prevent and combat drug abuse. But it's like no one has ever asked, what is drug abuse? Drug abuse is what occurs internally. That's how they define it. It's our thoughts, our feelings, and our desires before we take a substance, while we're, after we consume the substance, like while we're, feeling the effects, I guess. And then what happens to us, our thoughts and our feelings after we're done with the substance. That's the definition of abuse. And that's what they have explicitly stated, that's their mission, to prevent and combat these thoughts, feelings, and desires of individuals. And they're in every single drug that has been scheduled by the World Health Organization. I just like to use them. It's different entities, but the World Health Organization, when it comes to the treaties, are like the main entity. And the DEA, the FDA, all of them, every drug that has been scheduled goes through these evaluations, and they're looking for, so I'm trying to think of how to, there's so much, there's just so much. So the DEA is charged with scheduling drugs. Well, they delegate that process to Health and Human Services, and then Health and Human Services delegates that process to the FDA. And then the FDA delegates that process to pharmaceutical companies. And so there's this guidance, this document that directs every pharmaceutical company before they can get their drug approved and scheduled, that they have to do these investigations. And they direct them to do tests on animals, all for the purpose of trying to figure out what are we thinking if we consume a substance. And the key element that they're looking for, and they state this, is euphoria, happiness. That's defined by the dictionary as extreme joy. So they direct every pharmaceutical company that wants to put in, a drug, to document if their drug might cause joy, and it might cause abnormal thinking. Who defines that? Changes in mood, and many other things. And that's what most of the drug evaluations are about, is what is happening to the people? What is happening to these humans? What are they thinking? And the World Health Organization, I found a document, and all this is in the lawsuit too, from 1965, where the World Health Organization was looking to schedule different, like plant medicine, psychedelics, whatever, and actually anything. They did a report, and they were comparing, not really comparing, they were doing a report on various categories of drugs. And they did a report on what they called LSD type drugs. That's just what they categorized everything as back then. And they said in the LSD type drugs, they were looking at physical dependency and psychological dependency. And it said that there is no physical dependency when it comes to these, that people could, these are quotes too, paraphrase, but some of them are direct quotes. that individuals might use these substances, and if they don't have it again, they're fine. Like, it just doesn't cause that. But it is used by nonconformists. It is used by people to gain insight into their personal issues. It is used by people to expand their consciousness. It is used by people with intellectual and artistic pursuits. And then in that same report, they had morphine-type drugs. Can cause addiction, can cause physical dependency within a day or two, causes all this harm, blah, blah, blah. And then the result of that report is the LSD-type drugs. You can't possess those at all, but you can, of course, the other ones. And the thing is, those words should never be in any government document used by people to expand their consciousness and all those other things. And there was another thing that the World Health Organization wrote, an indicator of they call it psychic dependency, is how many times someone thinks about using a substance a day. The fact that these are in World Health Organization documents that led to these criminal laws that puts millions of people in cages, it's appalling. And the DEA, the FDA, all of them, it's just as bad. Again, you can look at any drug evaluation for any drug, whether it comes from a pharmaceutical company or not, and that's what they're looking for. What might people be thinking? And if it causes them joy, if it might cause them joy, it's all predictions. Oh, hold on, this is so important, I forgot about that. So, the government assigns, in their investigations of what we might be thinking, it's written in the evaluations too, published and everything. The government assigns employees to go on the internet and visit websites to try to see what people might be thinking when they use certain substances. They go to chat rooms and they use that in their evaluation to determine whether something should be criminalized. And they just make assumptions. They say, okay, this person is using this because they want to have hallucinations. So, and that's not good. We don't want people wanting that. So we're gonna criminalize that. And it's just, it's just crazy to me that that's what the war on drugs, I'm sure that's not how it started or whatever, but what it is now is investigating so many documents, investigating what we might be thinking and feeling when we use a substance, before we use it. What's our reasons for using it? You know, those are internal thoughts, our desires. And so that's the First Amendment freedom of thought claim, is that the government, the Constitution, strictly prohibits and fiercely protects what happens inside of us. And they are not permitted to do any kind of investigations into our thoughts. And that's all they do. Decades of investigations into our thoughts. So I was hoping to explain this a lot more eloquently, but a lot more passionately. But oh well. So let me think.
I think you're doing fine.
Great, Jennifer. Keep going.
But when I'm like pacing back and forth in my porch, like, oh, like all these things going through my head, it's like, it is very passionate for humans. So that's the main claim. The other claim is due process. That one's not as like beautiful, but it's definitely legit. So, okay, so we have these investigations, you know, and if they determine that, okay, we have a drug, a new drug, you know, from a pharmaceutical company, whatever, or anything. If they determine that it could cause euphoria, it could cause joy, then the next question is, can we make money off of it? If it's coming from a pharmaceutical company, then yes, then that drug will be legal, and they'll just place it on whatever schedule with hardly any justification. So it's, I mean, it's, I feel like this is so obvious that it's just kind of, that's why it's difficult to explain right now, but it's essentially, okay, so what drugs are people going to want to use? What are they gonna, what's gonna cause them joy or change, or change their thinking or whatever. And I mean, there's lots of different elements. So if it changes their thinking where it opens their mind and opens their consciousness, it doesn't matter if it comes from a pharmaceutical company, it's not gonna be legal, period. But if it doesn't, it doesn't, there's no threat of people starting to think for themselves and people starting to see what's really going on. And it simply just causes people, most of these actually numb people's minds and numb their emotions. But if it causes people joy, or it might be something that people might want to do, then the government says, okay, we'll make that legal. You just got a pharmaceutical company, you just got to pay us, line our pockets and go through us, and you can distribute all you want. So the second claim, the due process, essentially the law is that the government cannot take away liberty rights. And liberty rights are kind of lower than like fundamental, like freedom of thought. Those are fundamental rights. Those cannot be infringed. But liberty rights, like freedom of imprisonment, right to privacy, those can be infringed upon as long as the government does so with due process. Meaning they can't just make some arbitrary decisions that leads to the imprisonment of people. They have to actually, it has to be, there has to be some kind of justification. It has to be like some kind of procedure that makes sense. And so that's my second claim. I try to do a side-by-side comparison of like a pharmaceutical drug, an evaluation that Health and Human Services and FDA and all them did, and then an evaluation of, I can't remember what it was, but it was like this, there was like 5, it came out a couple years ago. It was like 5 of them, and it was like the 5, it wasn't NEO, but it was like 5 something, and there was like 5 of them.
5-methoxy-DMT?
I don't remember, but there was like, but there was like 5 of them. But it was all in the same evaluation. But it was related to, as they, like what they said in evaluations, related to like LSD and stuff like that. It was, one of those. And I tried to do a side-by-side comparison of, from Health and Human Services, their evaluation of one versus the pharmaceutical drug. And I couldn't even do a side-by-side comparison. It was just, it was crazy. And the pharmaceutical one that I was looking at was in a pill that was related to Ambien. And I did lots of research on it, and Ambien is linked to hundreds of thousands of deaths and hallucinations, as they call it. But they labeled it, Ambien's a hypnotic. So much harm, and there's lots of trafficking from overseas and everything with that. They didn't list any of that in there. And that's what they do when they have a new drug and it's like another drug, they usually compare it to that. And they didn't mention any of that stuff. But then the other one, there was one death that could potentially be related. The person also had alcohol and like an antidepressant in their system. And both of these can cause hallucinations, as they call it. And the pharmaceutical one linked to so many deaths and everything. This one maybe one. And of course the non-pharmaceutical was Schedule I, where it can be possessed or anything. And just the way that they evaluate anything that comes from a pharmaceutical company it's just so, I don't know how to explain it. It's like a kid did it. it makes no sense. They didn't put any intelligence in it. Not that kids are incredibly intelligent, so it's a bad example, but it's just so obvious that it's all about, you know, the money. So that's the due process claim. So I don't remember what else I was going to talk about. Does anyone have any questions to help me out here?
So there seems to be a tangential line between some of this and like the Fifth Amendment where you don't incriminate yourself, right? Like, is that like somehow connected in some way there? Can you tie that in at all?
I don't know.
You know how if you plead the Fifth because you have the right not to incriminate yourself with your thoughts, right? But yet they're asking these questions and these investigations about your thoughts.
Well, so I need some. They're not really. I don't know. I don't think so, because I mean they're not even supposed to ask the questions. That's the thing.
Right.
They're prohibited from even going there. But yet they're browsing the websites. They're even, you know, the tests on rats are for the sole purpose of figuring out what are humans thinking, what humans might be thinking, so that they know if it can be a marketable drug or not. Somebody else? Okay.
So if you win, how far away are you from the Supreme Court? How many levels?
The Supreme Court is next.
It will be next.
It is. So after the oral argument on April 1st, I expect the decision. And so here's the thing, the Ninth Circuit, whatever they decide on April 1st, well, it's probably going to take 3 to 6 months for them to issue their decision. And when they issue the decision, even though the decision is about whether my claims were improperly dismissed, it's whatever they say. Well, if they even just acknowledge that, hey, she might actually have a claim, that could be the end of the war on drugs in the Ninth Circuit, and while it's pending U.S. Supreme Court review. So once I get the decision from the Ninth Circuit, depending on, I have to research how to do this. There's a lot of stuff, there's a lot of rules, but either me or the defendants will be taking this to the Supreme Court, depending on what the decision is. I don't know that process, how long that is. So, but that's the next step, is the Supreme Court. This is going to do something.
Your standing will ride through this,
Yes.
regardless, right? That's my understanding.
It should. And my standing's pretty clear. I mean, you never know with courts. I mean, they can do whatever they want, but it's pretty clear that I violate a law, that I admit to it, and I allege that the law is unconstitutional, and therefore I face threat of prosecution. So yeah, that should remain. I am currently, right now, actually one of the things on appeal is my standing to challenge the international treaties, but that's like legal stuff that I didn't want to bore you guys with, but it is important. So I will be arguing that I do have standing to challenge the treaties as well, because they are domestic law. The lower court said they weren't domestic law because they were not self-executing treaties, which I don't even know who wrote these opinions, but that's only one way a treaty becomes domestic law, is if it's self-executing or if it's written into law through an act of Congress. And the treaties are so clearly written in the Controlled Substances Act. They even have their own little set of procedures stating that the government doesn't even have to do evaluations. They just, whatever World Health Organization says they're going to schedule. So that's my only standing issue, but it's okay. So, yeah.
Have you envisioned how you think things will work when you win?
Not my concern. I trust that humans are intelligent and they can sit at a table and figure this out. It's not I don't have a desire to control any kind of, what the aftermath. I just have faith and trust in my fellow humans. And to me, it doesn't really matter. And I trust how everything unfolds in the universe. I'm just stepping in just to do this. But, I forgot what I was gonna say. But yes, I trust that it'll unfold exactly how it needs to. The point is that this law can't continue. And it doesn't matter that if the government, whoever, the courts are kind of hesitant, like, shit, what are we gonna do? What's gonna happen? It doesn't matter. That's no justification for letting this law that so deeply goes into our sacred realm of thought to let that continue. Like they can't use that. They can try, but they can't use that as justification to let this continue. Like, we haven't thought of anything better. I don't know what we're gonna do. It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. This can't continue. So, I don't know. I trust everything.
Do you see a solution?
What's that?
Do you see a solution?
I think the solution is to free people so that they can figure everything out for themselves. That is the solution. I really don't like to see any control over other humans, period. And including, what should we do? What should people do? Should people be allowed to use drugs, blah, blah, blah. That's nobody's damn business. What I see is that the war on drugs by essentially drugging people with, like, all the controlled substances, they're all CNS drugs. They all affect your mind and everything. And the legal drugs, the legal controlled substances, almost all of them, they separate you from yourself. They numb your mind, numb your emotions, and essentially separate you from your own self. And it's such a big orchestration of separating people from themselves and causing dependency on others just for simple things, like almost every move we make, it's like, can we do that? Can I do that? Can I do that? It's seeking permission for everything. And what I see is that each individual, or what I want, really the main reason that I did this is because every single human carries something within them that no one else has. Everyone has a unique magic that no one else has. And I believe that the world really needs everyone to remember who they are and to be able to express that unique magic. And that's what is going to, I don't know. I haven't gone down that train of thought in a while. Things have evolved a lot, but that was the main thing. I just see this as a blanket of control, just suppressing human magic, individual human magic. And my goal is just to take off that blanket so that I trust every single human to do it. I don't want to tell them what to do. I don't want to tell them what to think or anything. And I think we need everybody's uniqueness. And to me, that is the solution. Just release this. It gives individuals, whether they want to use pharmaceuticals, that's fine, I don't care. But this at least removes that and gives humans the best opportunity to be able to, or a better opportunity to find themselves again, to remember who they are, remember how sacred they are, and to remember their magic and express that with the world. So.
I have another question. Kind of looking at it from a much more global perspective in terms of protocols. You talked about processes and then the individual thoughts. So those are the two main pillars that you're doing this, right? There's a due process. And a due process typically has protocols, processes, and procedures, oversights, administration, all that kind of stuff, right? And then there's the individual in terms of their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at those two things and then overlaying your experiences with plant medicine in a ceremonial setting, and looking at comparison of the individual coming in, having that individual thought in their experiences with the medicine, and looking at due process in terms of the ceremonial process, in terms of the shamanic elements associated with the dietas, the oversight of, do you see a comparison between the two in terms of what's managed by individuals versus what's managed by say traditional law or ancestral law? Do you see a comparison between the two in this experience?
I do. I don't know if I'm gonna answer this, what you're thinking, but I do. This seems, I don't know if this is the question you asked, because it seems very over here where I'm going, but I'll just go there. So I've been seeing a lot in the spiritual community. Like I've stepped away a lot because I see the exact same thing that the pharmaceutical companies and the government has done. I'm seeing it play out a lot in the spiritual and medicine community. And I've stepped away because I just, not necessarily, because I mean, I'm very selective with who I work with. So it's not that I needed to step away from anybody, but I have limited my consumption of different, like social media, different things, because I do see a lot of telling people there's something wrong with them, that they need to, that they're doing, if you want to do this, you need to heal this. If you don't do this, then you're gonna experience this. I mean, I can't think of examples, but it's just those words that's off my radar, and my radar of control over humans. And it's gotten where I don't even want to work with anybody, because every human is so sacred, and I don't want to project anything that I think they might be experiencing even, and so
Well, I would agree to your general assessments. Being a practitioner and being of indigenous lineage, the perception of an individual coming to you in terms of their freedom of choice to be with you, to seek a solution, versus the advocacy or the promotion of what's happening now, which is psychedelics, come get healed, coming from the shamanic or coming from the practitioner, initiating that is definitely something that I see a lot happening, and it's been then commercialized. This is what you need as a remedy to your healing. You need to heal.
Yes.
Versus an individual coming versus an individual having their own thoughts, their own understanding of why they're there, is overseen or superseded by what potentially the shaman is initiating or proposing for that individual to do. So therefore they initiate their own processes over them. So that's happening a lot lately. I would agree.
definitely.
So the ancestral teachings are moving away, or they're somehow being modified for the benefit of society to heal. There are definitely some big results that are really beneficial, right? So for example, just like some pharmaceuticals, there's certain medications, there's certain things that are because of the process and the oversights and administration, how you deliver it, the clinical trials, the licensings that are necessary in order to deliver the drugs, all of those do benefit individuals who have maybe these deep-seated, but overall in a larger piece, you're still trying to initiate something in terms of that sovereign ability for that person to take based on their thoughts, right? So if you look at psychedelics in terms of, say, veterans, for example, with my experience with combat vets, special combat vets, right? Huge trauma, huge PTSD that they go through, and they're looking for a solution. So they're leaving whatever they're receiving first, with all these different medications, and then now they're going to ayahuasca ceremonies, or they're going to these other forms of ceremonies. But they're leaded there with their own individual thoughts. But in that ceremony, you have shamanic elements, shamanic people, or people who are trained in a very specific way, initiating and proposing and filtering it that this is what needs in order for them to heal. So you still have that element, but they're still resolving a lot of that internal trauma. They're still coming up with solutions within themselves. So there's kind of like a balance of this all happening at the same time, right? So
Yeah.
where is that even line? And then, so where's that even line, and where do we refrain from proposing something to somebody, initiating it, and having them say that this is for you to heal, and really they just really maybe they don't want to heal, maybe they just want to give a certain thought back into a certain place. Right?
Yeah.
And so I see that happening a lot in today's time when it comes to psychedelic ceremonies and things of that nature. And I think another good example is just passed recently in Arizona. They were passing psychedelic assisted therapy. And so how do you pass that law in order for people to use psychedelic assisted therapy? You have to have all of these different licensed people be a part of that protocol to be able to initiate that and create those protocols in order to receive and pass the law, right? So I think there's a balance somewhere in there. That
Yeah.
I see that with your case, if it does blow it out of the water, then it revisits us, meaning humanity, and all these clinicians and all of these different people with these different expertise come back to the table and say, okay, so what is this really about? We have to come up with another process. We have to come up with something that is definitely different, which would end that concept of the war on drugs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I would love to be at the table when that happens, because I'm fine with regulations or anything, but just don't control other humans.
Yeah.
You just leave that alone. And my radar for that is so sensitive. So, and kind of to what you were saying, I mean, it's not even just in ceremony. It's like, I'm seeing stuff like on Instagram or whatever, that YouTube, where people are saying, you know, that you are oversharing because of this, or you should not get into a new relationship so soon because you need to heal this, or it's just stories. It's stories that someone else has created and is trying to put on you, and we're always going to do that. We're humans. So to not do that is probably an impossible task, but it can, I see it actually fading away, because more and more people are speaking up and saying, don't tell me, you know, what my story is, how to heal. Because I mean, to me, that's black magic. If you're going to tell someone that, okay, this is happening because of this, and you're inserting that, and so now they carry that story because they trusted you, maybe, or you know, because they see you as an authority, even if you know, you're just a, you know, I don't know, like you're a spiritual coach, whatever, you know.
Yeah, like yours matter.
Yeah, and the second you decide what issues someone else has, and you share that with them, I mean, you're projecting that story that puts them in there, and yeah, it's black magic, and it hurts people. I think it hurts people. Let them decide. Okay, I think, because we're so creative. That's the thing. That's our individual magic. Like, okay, let's say, talk to the person. You're like, well, what do you think is like, why do you think this is? And they can create their own story that works for them. That now, you know, now they have a story like, oh, okay, I do this because of this past trauma, or because I need to heal this. Well, now they have a story that they created, that then now they can figure out and you know, do some alchemy and figure out how to work through that, and that gives them their full power. And then you just sit and witness it, you know, and honor it. But yeah.
That's how I see your case. if I look at it from a ceremonial perspective,
Yes, thank you.
I see it, both require a protocol process, a due process, and there's the individual coming to that due process.
Yeah, like regulate the people who are providing, who are, who are in a position of authority and trust. That's fine, but leave the humans out of it. Leave the people out of it.
But there is still that tension. And my experience has been that I sought someone out for help that I trusted, and that was a great experience. But I also have had great experiences in the privacy of my own bedroom using the same medicine that have been in some ways just as powerful, or they have layered in. And so once I don't know how to untangle it, but once you start down this path, I mean, if we're talking decriminalization, what that says to me is it's decriminalized. It doesn't matter whether you take it yourself or you find it through a shaman or a hoaxer or whomever, it is decriminalized. So how do you separate through the process out when you get to all the stuff that you'll find on Facebook or something, ayahuasca ceremonies, and how do you know if that's legit, if that's a scam? I mean, how do you do that, but without compromising my freedom in the privacy of my own room to take psilocybin or whatever else that I may choose to take? Do you hear where I'm going?
I do.
And it gets very
Yeah.
twisted because a lot of people, even though it's so trendy right now to seek out, and I'm not knocking shamanic experiences, but that it's becoming very in vogue to do that. How do you separate that out from just so many other people who just are like doing it, and we can't judge their motive. Like, are they doing it just to feel good? Well, is that wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's
Is
nobody's
that-
business.
Yeah, it really isn't. You don't have to have an intention necessarily that you're gonna go in and you're gonna have some revelation how you
Yeah.
and I've had limited experience. I'm like a novice. I have white hair, but I'm a novice in this area. But, the tension of motive and what you're seeking, I think it gets very, I applaud you for what you're doing, but it's so complicated to think through as you go to what. And then you filter in other drugs that we haven't talked about, that people choose and have the choice to do that. And certainly I understand the shame. I have that in my own family. And I see true value if the drug of choice was decriminalized, so that maybe my family member wouldn't have gone down this awful path, or jail, prison, shame, guilt, a life wasted, instead of becoming judged instead of loved. So now I'm going down, but my only point in saying all this is it is so diverse and complicated. So because we're in this group, we tend, even though we say we're not, we're talking about plant medicines and stuff. Well, what you're talking about, and it touches so many different people, so I don't know if that makes sense to you. My heart is with you, my brain is like very
Yeah.
complicated.
Our country prides itself on being the land of the free. And this law, the Controlled Substances Act, is the most egregious, felonious assault against freedom that you could ever imagine. It doesn't matter if it's, heroin that you're talking about. It's none of the government's business what any of us do as an individual. And it's our life to live. They cannot live our life for us, and no one else should try either. It's up to us what we do with our time here. And the fact that they made these things illegal the way they did harmed way more people than if they had been legal the whole time. Because if you could go down to Walgreens and buy heroin, it's gonna say on the package, if you take this much of this shit, it's gonna kill you. And guess how many overdoses would be avoided just by that? Just by that alone, let alone the education that'll come, because it'll be legal to talk about it, it'll be legal to teach about it, and people will know what these things actually do and what the right dosages are and how they can be very addictive, some of them. it's a paradigm shift that we need, because the war on drugs is just a machine for money. It's all nonsense. It doesn't help anyone. Your family member would be far better off if it was all legal. If everything was just completely legal, we'd all be in a much safer world, because the cartels would not be in control. They wouldn't be lacing shit with fentanyl to up their customer counts and kill a whole bunch of people because they don't care if they die. I mean,
it still goes, and what you're saying dovetails, it still goes back to that basic premise. If it's decriminalized, then everything else can be figured out at a later time. You know, like the practitioners, et cetera, but if the substance itself is decriminalized, so that people are going to be put in jail or prison because they did this or whatever, and then trust that in some way they'll find their own path through that. But so we're saying, I agree with you, but I think as long as, in my mind, if I stick with decriminalization, I can grasp it.
Mhm.
But when you start going into all of these things, because this is a growing field,
Yeah.
and so that's what it gets. We just.
Yeah, that's why
So
I
I
don't.
think you said that's not really your concern.
No.
Your concern is the decriminalization.
Is stop. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I'm using exactly the right word.
I mean, that's the
But I think you
the
said
results.
early on that I haven't really thought about that. This is my role, this is what I've stepped into the universe to do.
Yeah.
This is my purpose now. And then we'll have to let whoever else, then I'm not in control of that.
Yeah.
So,
I'm unlocking the gate. I already left, but I'm unlocking the gate. And
I have a couple questions.
sure.
When you go in front of the panel like the Ninth Circuit, I'm pretty sure they're gonna ask you what you think the government's role should be. And how would you answer that?
I would say that's not relevant. What's relevant is that we have a law that violates the Constitution and has harmed millions and millions of people. And that's, yeah, if they ask that, I mean, it's just not, I would probably say what I said earlier, I trust people to figure it out, just don't control people. I've heard, just kind of on to some of the things that were being said, I've heard people say, like, oh, we don't want, I've heard this from several people, we don't want people going around getting high all day. And it's like, there's so much to break down in that. It's like, first of all, what's your definition of high? Like, you want someone to go feel good? Like, how is that your
You expect an
business?
answer before sending it back down to the trial court. They would expect an answer other than it's not relevant. That's why they're asking what they think it is.
No, their job is to decide whether the Constitution, whether this law, it potentially violates the Constitution. Not what future legislation might come, or how do we solve this, anything. That's the legislature's job.
first step.
Yeah.
First step first.
I don't think they'll ask me that because I mean, who am I to say what the new regulation should be? And that's not for them to decide either.
If this does go through, do you see yourself being at the table for setting in those new regulations?
I would like to be.
What
I
happened?
have seen it, and
So this is the mischievous side of me, so you do want to be a part of controlling how this comes to people?
no, my job at the table would be to see if, and I already do this, I'm on the board of a nonprofit, is to see where they might be trying to control people and say, no, redo that, rewrite that. That would be my number one job, is to make sure that doesn't happen.
What happens after the Ninth Circuit if it doesn't go? If they don't give you the green light to the Supreme Court? What?
Well, they don't give the green light, they just produce their decision. If it's in my favor, then the defendants will likely take it to the Supreme Court. If it's not in my favor, I'm gonna take it to the Supreme Court. So it's like the next review.
So you can appeal if it's not okay. Is that
Yeah.
what happened,
Kind of,
or-
yeah.
And then follow-up question:
what can we all do? If this has resonated with anybody and they want to support, what can we do?
So the main thing, I think the most powerful thing that we can do is believe in this. And that starts with remembering your own sacredness, remembering how that this is your human existence. These are your thoughts, your feelings, your beliefs, and they're nobody else's. They are so sacred. Protect those, remember them. And when you can build that within you and know how sacred it is, how important it is, and then I believe that will help you to see how egregious it is that the government enters those realms. And by having that within you, then I think that will enable you to stand for this and believe in it. I can't do this without belief. And I'm not doing it for me. I just had a crazy idea, but I cannot do it without other people believing in this. And you have to believe that, know how sacred you are first, and then that'll help you understand the lawsuits. And then our collective belief in this, that's what's going to help. That is the number one most important thing. And I would ask, so, we're used to things just not working out, we're used to things just kind of always going as they are, and I would ask for you to believe, even if just for a moment, that this lawsuit could end the war on drugs, because it really has true potential. Nothing like this has ever been brought to the courts before. And it's going to take a lawsuit to end the war on drugs. Why not this one?
Yeah.
So if you could just believe in that miracle, believe that this is possible, and that you all are in the room and in the city of where it all started, that's going to be the best thing. And for me personally, this has been a very difficult journey. I've been essentially in isolation, alone, 24 hours a day with my thoughts for like 3 years now. It's been very challenging, but I needed to dedicate my time, my soul, my energy to this, because I've done a lot to create this. I don't really reside in this realm. I'm out there figuring stuff out and then creating and trying to figure out how to bring it down into this realm. But it can get very challenging, and I don't like those words, but sometimes I'm up there and might float away. There's been many times that I have almost floated away, and thank you, my dear sister Kasha. She is my grounder. I would have floated away if it wasn't for her. But I want to be brought back to my heart space. And brought back here to earth, because I have to go up there to do all my work and everything. I need to stay here. And to be able to do this, I've had to do a lot of work on myself. As I mentioned earlier, I would get panic attacks just talking in front of a few people. And then now I do this. So it's like, then I filed a lawsuit, and it's like, shit. So I got 3 years to catch up and work on all those trauma, everything, all my self-belief, my self-worth, because I hated myself. I literally hated myself. I thought I had no value whatsoever. I grew up just thinking that was my role in the world, is I was just a piece of shit. And walking through life, feeling that, just thinking that's your role in life, it does a lot. It wires a lot of stuff in me. And that's why my heart is also with any individual, that feels like that, especially at the hands of the government, telling people they're pieces of shit. But, so, if you ever think about this, you think about me, send me some grounding. Send me your voice. that's another thing. That's the main thing. The more I remember what I'm doing this for, then, so think about if you're advocating for yourself versus if you're advocating for another, and how much easier it is to advocate for another. If I forget that, and because it's been a journey, I go up and down, and I start thinking, like, who the hell am I to do this? What the hell, my old programming, like, nothing I say has value. This is so stupid, blah, blah, blah. Then I go into my cave and I don't do this. So it helps to have, essentially, I'm asking you to arm me with your voices. When I wrote the lawsuit, I was listening to just songs about addiction and just suffering of humanity. I just had a playlist on just all the time, constantly looking at stories to fuel me, because that just fueled me to want to do, months and hours and hours and hours of research and writing. And that helps me. For me to go and stand in front of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, it's unbelievable. I fell to my knees crying when I got the news, because that told me that I had come this far, that I worked on myself that much, that I could actually stand in front of the court and do this. But my armor, my courage, is remembering that it's for every voice, for every person that didn't know how to do this. I'm just the one who knew how to do it. I'm just the vessel. I have this mind that can take so much information and reduce it down into something. And so that was my gift. But it's the voices of the people that fuel this. So I have a website, and if you want to, share anything, I do have like a page where people can share their story, even if it's just like one line, whatever. It means a lot to me, and it helps me. It helps me remember, and it helps me stand up tall when I go in there. And it's not, because then it's not about me. It's not about my self-worth or whatever. I'm standing tall for everybody else. So if you believe in this and want to see the change, it would really help me to help me stand up tall to do this. And
what is the website, excuse me?
It's, there's decriminalizeourminds.com or decrimourminds.com or decrimourminds.org. I bought all the domains. So, but, yes.
Hey, just for one thing, feedback on this. The premise is brilliant. I started thinking, what else would this be applicable to? And it would be, you can't go look at the sunrise. You can't go see something beautiful.
You can't hold an apple in your hand.
Yeah, you can't.
Literally.
Exactly.
You can't cook a delicious dinner because it's going to make you feel good.
Exactly.
And it's brilliant that you brought it down to me, that's like a quantum. It's what is the issue? And you bring it down to, I've got a product that hasn't been approved, therefore it's legal.
Yeah.
And that's not the way it should be. There should be an analysis to sit there and say, this is illegal because it's only harmful. Whatever you were talking about that killed thousands and thousands of people. There's a trade there. And then I got a logistical question for you. You say you're doing this by yourself. Are you doing any mock oral arguments with people to prepare yourself?
It's just me and mine.
Let's go.
I bounced some
Let's
stuff
go.
off of. I've done this all along. I've learned everything. I did all the research. I quit my job. I spent all my money. I'm literally down to my last dollar to do this.
I think that's part of what Rick was asking too. Do you need financial help? Do you need money?
Are you taking donations on your website? Yes. I really
What-
want to honor a lot of our time.
Just one final question, because you are presenting this soon, correct?
Yeah.
April 1st. Is there value in any of us showing up? Is that even a good idea?
Oh, yes,
If
please.
so, could you maybe share some
Everybody
more
show
information
up.
about that?
They're gonna know. When we walk in that courtroom and the whole thing's full, they're gonna know.
Yeah.
Is that downtown Phoenix or where?
Yeah, I'll do it. We'll get it advertised. It's at the, it's actually in the ceremonial courtroom. Which is awesome. At the federal courthouse. But just real quick, sorry, Jen. I just want to say, because everything that you just said about, like, I highly recommend reading the lawsuit and the appeal. They're long, but I wrote it for the general public, and I actually talk about that. I said, you know, what's next? Criminalizing dancing because it can cause joy, criminalizing chocolate. You know, I actually put a lot in there. So I highly recommend going to the website and reading. I published everything, so reading the complaint, the appeal. I think it's enjoyable reading. It can be long, but it's enjoyable reading. But yes, donations. This is the first time ever asking. Like I've had to get to the point where I feel okay asking. But yeah, I am. I've spent all my energy, time, and I took out all my retirement, which wasn't much. I wasn't really a lucrative attorney. I don't like charging people. And I was only an attorney for a few years. But I took out all my retirement and spent all my savings. I take odd jobs every now and then. I've been donating plasma to get money. But yeah, so a little bit would help, and but please, if you do donate, write a statement, you know, like just anything, you know, just a line of who, if it's in honor of somebody, anything, that would be very helpful.
Please give it up for Jennifer Murphey. I would really like to say that, you know, thank you so much for fighting for our sovereignty. Thank you for fighting for our children and our grandchildren's sovereignty, and what you're saying, and that nobody has the right to make decisions and choices for us. Thank you for having so much bravery and courage. Thank you for your team and grounding you and holding you down while you're in the spirit realm, getting the work done and doing your own work. I honor you, and I'm so honored to stand behind you. And I know all of us are feeling the same. So thank you so much for your wisdom and your courage and sharing that with the community and fighting for us.
Hell yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Woo!